Space was silent. Not the quiet of a calm evening or the hush before a storm, but the deep, oppressive stillness of a predator's den. The stars glittered faintly over the black expanse, cold witnesses to what was about to unfold. Captain Daniel Mercer stood on the bridge of the USS Trident, his hands clasped tightly behind his back, jaw set. The ship floated on the edge of what had once been peaceful trade lanes, now a no man's land after the arrival of the Zovari Dominion. The aliens had made one promise when they appeared in orbit over the first colony world: submit or burn. He had seen the footage. Entire cities swallowed in emerald fire. Human warships split open like tin cans, their crews never even given the dignity of surrender. Contact, dead ahead, came the calm voice of Lieutenant Sarah Kane, his tactical officer. Her hands danced over the glowing interface. Zovari heavy cruiser, inbound at 20,000 clicks. Transmitting challenge signal. Daniel's lips pressed into a hard line. The challenge signal was a formality, a last chance to avoid bloodshed. But they all knew what the answer would be. The comm channel flared to life, and a deep, resonant voice filled the bridge. Humans. Your resistance is irrational. Your weapons are primitive. Your armor is brittle. Cease your futile defiance, or you will be annihilated. Daniel's fingers tightened behind his back. The Zovari were always so calm, so sure. Their tone was not one of threat but of inevitability, as if they were explaining gravity to a child. Sarah turned her head slightly, her eyes hard. They're charging weapons. Of course, they are, Daniel muttered. He stepped forward, his boots echoing against the deck as he approached the command chair. The Trident's crew watched him, waiting for his word. Bring us around, he said quietly, then louder, with steel in his tone, target their forward batteries. Load main cannons with sabot penetrators. The order seemed to hang in the air. Sir, Sarah said, her voice dropping. If this doesn't work. It'll work, Daniel cut her off. And it had to. Because Trident carried humanity's answer to the Zovari's so-called perfect armor. Weeks ago, a team of engineers at a black site on Mars had devised a new type of ammunition, hyperdense, magnetically accelerated penetrators designed not to burn, not to explode, but to punch through. They had tested them on captured Zovari plating. The result had been devastating. But this would be the first time anyone tried it in real combat. Helm, Daniel said, his voice now cold and steady, take us in. Minimum firing range. The bridge dimmed to red alert lighting, and the Trident's engines roared to life. The stars outside shifted as the ship banked toward the incoming cruiser, a sleek beast of metal and menace. The first exchange came fast. Green lances of plasma streaked across the void, tearing past Trident's shields and shaking the deck. Consoles sparked. One of the younger crewmen flinched. Shields at 70%, shouted Ensign Brooks, his voice cracking despite his best attempt to sound steady. Hold them together, Daniel growled. The Trident closed distance. Every second felt stretched, taut like a wire ready to snap. Range? 6,000 clicks. Sarah barked. Fire. The main cannons discharged with a thunderous vibration that reverberated through the hull. There was no blinding light, no cinematic flash, just a cold, brutal streak of tungsten alloy tearing through the void at near relativistic speed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Zovari cruiser bloomed with a brilliant flash as its forward plating shattered. Direct hit! Sarah cried, her face lit by the glow of the explosion. Their shields are gone. We cracked it clean through. A stunned silence gripped the bridge. For years, the Zovari had claimed their armor was perfect, unbreakable. Humanity had lost fleets trying to prove otherwise. But now, for the first time, they had bled. The comm channel reopened, this time filled with sharp, alien clicks, frantic, disbelieving. Then came the voice again, but it had lost its measured calm. Human vessel, what have you done? Daniel allowed himself the faintest of smiles. Level the playing field, he said. Reload, he ordered. Target their reactor housing. Let's finish this. The Zovari ship fired again, but its shots went wide, panicked. The Trident's second salvo struck like a hammer. The enemy's reactor core went critical, and in an instant, the cruiser erupted into a silent, expanding fireball. The bridge erupted into cheers, shouts, whoops, slaps on the back. Brooks let out a yell that was half laughter, half relief. But Daniel did not cheer. He stood staring at the growing debris field, his expression unreadable. He knew what this meant. The Zovari would not take this lightly. One ship lost could be dismissed as chance. But when word spread that their perfect armor had been breached, that humans had found a way to kill their warships, they would come. In force. Transmit a message to Fleet Command, Daniel said quietly. Tell them the test was a success. Sarah nodded, her exhilaration fading into something grim. And when the Zovari respond? Daniel turned toward the viewport, his reflection staring back at him, hard and resolved. Then we hold the line, he said. That night, the stars seemed just a little brighter and just a little more dangerous. Because somewhere out there, in the dark between worlds, the Zovari Dominion was no longer smiling. And for the first time, humanity had given them a reason to be afraid. The debris of the destroyed Zovari cruiser still drifted silently in space, glowing faintly as its molten fragments cooled when the next nightmare came. The USS Trident had barely completed damage control and finished transmitting their victory report when the long-range scanners began to scream. Multiple contacts, Lieutenant Sarah Kane said, her voice sharp. 17, no, 20 ships. Zovari signatures. They're coming in fast. The bridge went deathly still. Even the hum of the ship seemed quieter. Time to intercept? Captain Daniel Mercer asked. 27 minutes. That wasn't nearly enough time to run. Not nearly enough time to call reinforcements that could get here before the Zovari arrived. Put me through to Fleet Command, Daniel said. The holographic display crackled to life, revealing Admiral Cole Whitaker, a man whose presence could still fill a room even through a transmission. His sharp gray hair and square jaw looked carved from stone. Report, Whitaker said without preamble. Daniel straightened. Sir, we engaged and destroyed a Zovari heavy cruiser using the new Sabo penetrators. Their armor failed exactly as predicted. But, he hesitated, then forced the words out, they know now. And they're coming. 20 ships inbound. The Admiral was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. You hold them, he said finally. Reinforcements are already mobilizing. If we lose this sector, we lose the Mars trade corridor, and that's the first domino in a chain we can't afford. Understood? Daniel's throat felt dry. Understood, sir. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in a heavy, oppressive silence. The crew threw themselves into preparation. Every cannon was reloaded, every capacitor recharged. The engineers pushed the reactor until it howled, coaxing every ounce of power into shields and weapons. Daniel walked the decks, speaking to the crew, looking them in the eye. Ensign Brooks was checking the alignment on the portside gun batteries, his hands shaking slightly. You holding up, Brooks? Daniel asked. The young man swallowed. I just didn't think we'd be the first ones to face them, sir. Not like this. Daniel put a firm hand on his shoulder. You wanted to serve on the Trident, didn't you? Yes, sir. Then this is where we stand. This is what we're here for. Brooks nodded, his fear tempered by the captain's calm. When the Zovari fleet emerged from FTL, it was like watching a storm tear a hole in reality. One by one, their ships appeared, sharp, angular shapes glinting under the distant light of the stars. They're hailing us, Sarah said. Put it through, Daniel replied. The voice that filled the bridge was no longer calm, no longer condescending. It was cold. Human vessel. You have committed an act of war. Surrender your technology, your weapons, and your ship, and we may grant you swift destruction. Resist, and we will erase not just you, but your colony worlds, your cities, your entire species from existence. Daniel stared at the view screen, feeling the weight of 1,000 years of human stubbornness in his chest. Tell them, he said, his voice low, to come and try. The first salvo came almost immediately, emerald beams slashing across space. The Triton's shields flared under the onslaught, but held. "Return fire!" Daniel barked. The main cannons boomed, the ship trembling with each discharge. The sabot rounds screamed through the void, and once again the Zovari's perfect armor shattered. One of their destroyers broke apart in a brilliant flash, scattering molten wreckage across the battlespace. But there were 19 more. The sky lit up with plasma. For the next 10 minutes, it was chaos. The Triton weaved and rolled, her engines pushed to the brink as she avoided death by meters. The deck shook with every hit that bled through the shields. Warning klaxons blared. Fire suppression drones darted through the smoke-filled corridors. Starboard shields down to 30%. Sarah shouted. "Divert power from aft." Daniel snapped back. "We'll be exposed from behind." "We won't have a behind if we don't survive the next 2 minutes." The crew obeyed, and another volley tore into the enemy fleet, punching through a second ship's hull and detonating it from within. 2 down. But then the Zovari changed tactics. Multiple missile locks. Brooks screamed. "Point defense online. Shoot them down." The ship's automated guns whirred to life, spitting streams of tracers into the void. Explosions lit the dark as missile after missile was destroyed, but not all of them. One slammed into the port side, the explosion rattling every bolt in the ship. "Port engine offline," the helmsman cried. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Compensate with starboard thrust. We're not dead yet." The battle raged, but the crew of the Triton fought like wolves cornered. Every shot they fired claimed another Zovari life. Every casualty they took only hardened their resolve. And then, finally, a moment of luck. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice fierce despite the sweat running down her face. "I have a firing solution on their command ship." Daniel turned toward her, his eyes hard. "Take it." The main cannon thundered one last time. The sabot round flew true, slicing through the alien flagship like a knife through glass. The ship erupted in a chain of secondary explosions, and suddenly the enemy formation faltered. "They're breaking off!" Brooks cried. The Zovari ships turned, retreating in ragged formation, their threat squadrons now hesitant, wounded. A long, exhausted silence filled the bridge. The crew looked around at one another, breathing hard, streaked with sweat and smoke. "Damage report," Daniel said finally. "Hull breaches in 3 sections. 2 engines crippled. Shield generator at 30% capacity," Sarah recited grimly. "Casualties? 17 dead. 29 injured." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Those were names he would have to write letters for. But they had survived. And more importantly, they had won. Later, as the crew began repairs, Daniel stood at the viewport again, looking at the stars. "They won't stop," Sarah said quietly, stepping up beside him. "No," Daniel agreed. "They won't. But we hurt them. Badly." Daniel's gaze hardened. "We showed them we can fight. We showed them their armor isn't perfect." He turned toward her, his voice low, resolute. "And next time, we're going to do more than survive. Next time, we make them run." 3 weeks later, the USS Triton was no longer just a ship, it was a symbol. The victory at the Mars Trade Corridor had ignited a fire across the human colonies. Engineers worked around the clock, forging more of the sabot penetrators, modifying every available warship to fire them. Planetary shipyards poured out gunboats and frigates faster than they ever had before. And now, all of that preparation was about to be tested. Captain Daniel Mercer stood once more on his bridge, dressed in a fresh uniform, though his face still bore the hard edges of exhaustion. The Triton was patched, reinforced, and bristling with new weapons. Beside them, an entire human task force floated in formation: 10 heavy cruisers, 20 destroyers, 50 gunships. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. "Status report," Daniel said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of what was about to happen. "All ships report green," Lieutenant Sarah Kane replied. "Admiral Whitaker is on the line." The holographic display flared to life, revealing the Admiral once again. This time, his face was grim but proud. "Captain Mercer," Whitaker said. "The Zovari have committed everything they have to this sector. Our intelligence says over 100 ships are inbound, including supercapitals. If they break through here, Earth is next." Daniel nodded once. "We hold." "You don't just hold," Whitaker said. "You show them. Today, we prove they can bleed, we prove we can win, or humanity dies trying. Understood?" "Yes, sir." The transmission cut, and the bridge went quiet. Every officer, every crewman aboard the Trident knew what this meant. This was the line. There would be no retreat. The Zovari fleet arrived like a tidal wave of metal. Ship after ship tore out of FTL, blotting out the stars, filling the tactical display with hostile red icons. "Contacts confirmed 112 vessels," Sarah said, her voice tight. Ensign Brooks swallowed hard. "We're outnumbered more than 2-1. Daniel's jaw set. "Good. That means they won't miss the message." He stood tall, feeling every eye on him. "All hands," he said into the ship-wide comms, his voice carrying through every corridor, every gun deck, every engine room. "Today we fight not just for this sector, not just for the fleet, but for Earth, for Mars, for every colony they've burned. You've seen what they do to those who kneel. We're not kneeling. Not today. Not ever." The ship erupted with cheers, a defiant roar that seemed to vibrate in the bulkheads themselves. "Bring us to attack speed," Daniel ordered. The battle began with thunder. Hundreds of plasma lances split the void, and human ships answered with a storm of sabot fire. The first wave of Zovari destroyers fell like wheat before a scythe, their armor peeling apart under the relentless assault. "Keep firing," Sarah barked, her hands flying over the controls. "Target their heavy cruisers, concentrate fire." The human fleet moved as one, coordinated and disciplined. Each time the Zovari pressed forward, they were met with a withering barrage that tore through their formations. But the Zovari had numbers, and they were furious. One of the human destroyers, the Valiant, took a direct hit from 3 plasma beams. It split apart in a silent fireball, its fragments scattering across space. Daniel forced himself not to look away. Every ship lost was a gut punch, but there was no time for grief. Enemy supercapital moving into range. Brooks shouted. The massive ship loomed on the viewscreen, a monster of black alloy and glowing engines. Its hull bristled with weapons, its sheer size dwarfing the Trident. "That's their command ship," Sarah said, her voice tight. Daniel's mind raced. They could keep picking off destroyers and cruisers, but unless that flagship fell, the rest of the fleet would keep coming. "Bring us in," he said, his voice like steel. "Sir, we won't survive a broadside at this range." "We don't need to survive a broadside. We just need to survive long enough to put a round through its heart." The Trident dove through the chaos of battle, weaving between plasma fire and missile detonations. Fighters screamed past, some human, some Zovari, dueling in vicious dogfights that flashed like lightning across the void. "Shields at 40%. Sarah shouted. "Hold them steady." Daniel growled. The flagship loomed closer and closer until it filled the viewscreen, its black hull reflecting distant starlight. Firing solution locked. Fire. The main cannon boomed. The sabot round streaked forward, faster than the eye could follow, and smashed into the Zovari flagship. The armor buckled, split, and then, for the first time in history, a Zovari command ship's core went critical. The explosion was blinding. When the light faded, the flagship was gone. Only debris remained. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the remaining Zovari ships broke formation. First in hesitation, then in full retreat, fleeing into the black. "They're running," Brooks whispered, disbelief and awe in his voice. "They're actually running." A stunned silence gripped the bridge and then erupted into cheers. Officers who had been ready to die at their posts were now laughing, shouting, pounding each other on the back. Sarah let out a long breath, her shoulders sagging. "We did it." Daniel didn't cheer. He just watched the tactical display as the red icons vanished one by one, slipping back into FTL. "They'll be back," Sarah said softly. "Yes," Daniel agreed. Then, finally, a small, hard smile crossed his face. "But next time, they'll remember this day." He turned to the crew, his voice calm but proud. "They said their armor was perfect. Today, we proved them wrong. And we're just getting started." The crew erupted into another cheer, louder this time, a sound not just of victory but of defiance, a sound that would echo across the stars. Far away, in some distant war council deep within the Dominion, the Zovari would whisper about the day the humans made them run. And the galaxy would never forget it.